So, the behaviorists believe that behavior is simply a product of our environment, and they don't really have any concern for cognition, right? And even like with classical conditioning, they argue that there is no cognition involved in that, meaning there's no thought process involved in it, that it just sort of automatically happens. And then with operant conditioning with B.F. Skinner, he says, well, there is thought process, but we don't actually have a choice in how we behave, right? Because we're just responding to our environment. Um, there are other psychologists, though, that rightfully so argue that with learning, there is cognition involved, there is thought process involved, and we don't just need reinforcement or punishment to learn something. One of those fields, one of those areas of learning, psychology, is what is called observational learning. Observational learning is exactly what it sounds like. It is learning something simply by observing somebody else do it. It's also referred to as social learning, right? And then modeling. This was initially researched by this guy right here, Albert Bandura, who founded a field of psychology called the social cognitive field, or the social cognitive perspective on psychology, which basically looks at human behavior and personality as an interaction between our environment and how we think about it. And one of the things that he said was he went against the like people like B.F. Skinner and said that some learning. Oh, Rory, I didn't realize that you and Aiden were in the same room. Okay. Some learning, a lot of what we learn, we simply learn by watching other people, and there is like no actual reinforcement involved in it. And we just kind of copy, we imitate others. For instance, and in this is a story about one of my cousins. And I guess maybe since I'm recording it, I won't say the bad word. Well, right. There's a bad word in it, but I think it's a relatively funny story. So my cousin Beckett, who is, I think he's like 14 now, but he was like 3. And when this happened, he was at home with my uncle. My uncle's a lawyer. And my uncle was late for court, and his wife, my aunt, was late getting home. And like seems like most people in my family, my uncle has a relatively bad vocabulary, meaning he cusses a lot. And he was kind of like he was annoyed that my aunt was late, and so he was kind of like just like storming around the house, and he was muttering under his breath like, "Where's your effing mom?" Okay, Beckett's just sitting there playing, not paying attention, whatever. So my aunt gets home, my uncle leaves, my aunt makes Beckett lunch. She gives him lunch, and he looks at it and he goes, "Thank you, fucking mom." Okay, he just learned that. It just like picked that up by just observing, by imitating, and there was no reason to say it, but it's like the kids say the darndest thing. Well, they do that by observing and imitating. So one of the things that Bandura really, one of the things that Bandura really wanted to look at was how we model aggression. Okay, there was a belief up until about the 1970s that viewing aggression actually made us feel less aggressive. That by viewing aggression and viewing violence, that actually it's what's called the catharsis hypothesis. And by viewing that, it actually took away our aggressive urges. In hindsight, thinking that sounds really stupid. right? And that's what Bandura was thinking. He's like, no, I think that it actually increases our aggressive urges. So what he did was he set up an experiment, and you got to know who Bandura is, father of the social cognitive perspective. He's going to come up again, and you got to know what this experiment is. He set up this experiment. It's called the Bobo doll experiment. And what he did was he had an adult in a room being aggressive, kicking and punching this thing right here, what he called a Bobo doll. You all know what it is. It's like one of those like roly poly things that you can like push down and it like pops back up. It's like weighted on the bottom. And so he had an adult being aggressive towards it, kicking and punching it, and then a kid in another room viewing the adult being aggressive towards it. After the adult was done, they put the kid in the room with the Bobo doll. Didn't tell him anything, just say, like, all right, now you can come in and play in here. What do you think the kids did? All right. Yep. They acted aggressively towards the doll. And in most instances, they actually acted more aggressively towards the doll than the adult had. They mimicked the language that the adult used, but they started using weapons on it. They started using hammers and guns on the doll, which the adult had not done. All right. So we're going to watch a clip from this. And let me see. I thought I had a better one than what I have on here. Guess not. Okay. All right. So you can see there, okay, it actually, by observing violence, it actually made them more aggressive. Um, they have expanded this research into sort of understanding, there is a lot of evidence now that people who are abused have a much higher rate of abusing others when they are adults. And they think that this is partially why, because of the viewing of so much aggression at a young age. All right. So, how do we imitate? All right. What allows for us to imitate? Because not all animals can imitate. All right. Kind of only high level ones can. Well, in the 1980s, I believe, in the 1980s, researchers were doing studies with learning how monkeys imitated others, because monkeys can imitate, chimpanzees can imitate. And what they found when doing these experiments, all of a sudden, some groups of neurons in the frontal lobe started activating that they had never seen before. And what they found from this is that they discovered a new type of neuron they had not ever seen before called a mirror neuron. And what they found, what they believe, they're still doing research on these, but what they believe these mirror neurons allow for us to do is mirror or mimic other people's behavior. Um, we are naturally predisposed to mimic others' behavior. Us, monkeys can, I think dogs can mimic other dogs. Um, and so, sort of just higher level creatures. But does anybody know why, like, there is an evolutionary basis for mimicking? Anybody know why we mimic, what the purpose of it is? All right, we do mimic to learn. We mimic behavior that we see that somebody to say, like, oh, I like what they're doing. All right, anybody else know why? Because we mimic unconsciously. Anybody else? Anybody know why? Exactly. Yep. Yeah. Most of you all have heard like imitation is the highest form of flattery, right? We actually mimic, if you're talking to somebody and you're talking like face to face, you all will start mirror and you like that person, you will start mirroring their behavior unconsciously. Because by doing that, it's called the chameleon effect. All right. And I do so if we were in class, we'd do something with this. But like if they cross their arms, you'll cross your arms too without knowing it. If you're sitting across from somebody who crosses their legs, you'll cross your legs as well. All right, without even realizing why you're doing it. And it's basically our way of saying, like, I'm mimicking you, so I'm showing you, so I'm building a connection with you and essentially showing empathy. This is the same reason why, everybody's heard the phrase like yawns are contagious, right? When one person yawns, probably some of you all are going to, even mentioning yawning, some of you are going to yawn. That's mirror neurons right there. Okay, monkeys will show it. They actually have found that psychopaths kind of lack these mirror neurons, which shows partially why they're not able to mimic or even act normally a lot of the time. Um, one of the things that they have found with these mirror neurons is that we are actually more helpful to others when we view somebody else being helpful, right? What is called pro-social behavior. But these are also why you like if you look at somebody getting hurt, you will almost feel that same thing, right? So like if you were watching the Dallas quarterback, blanking on his name. Yeah, if you watch like that injury to Dak and you see his ankle and you're like, oh shit, like that's mirror neurons. Or like guys, you all will know this. If you see somebody getting kicked in a certain area, you will automatically sort of cringe and like go ooh as well. Right? Right? That's mirror neurons that are doing that. So here's a quick little video from this is from Brain Games. All right, so there you go. Okay, if you cringed or whatnot, that is your mirror neurons at work. All right, anybody got any questions about that? Almost done. All right, another type of cognitive learning is what is called latent learning. Latent means hidden. Latent learning is learning that you don't really know that you have until there's a reason to use it. So, like, we pick up a lot of stuff throughout the day, okay? And most of it we don't even pay attention to. But some of it does get encoded, and we're able to kind of pull it out if we need it. For instance, like trivia is a good example of this. So I play trivia pretty much every Wednesday, and I know a lot of. Uh, I have a lot of like random knowledge about stuff just from just from being a history buff and whatnot. Most of it is useless, right? But I like know some stuff that I don't even know that I know until I get asked about it. And I'm like, oh wait, I have heard of this before. So basically, latent learning is learning that you don't know that you have until there is a reason for you to display it, until there's reinforcement for it. An example of this, the main example of this that you need to know for this class was research done by a guy named Edward Tolman with cognitive maps. A cognitive map is a mental representation of our environment. And he found that even so, like cognitive maps are the reason why you can like get around your house in the dark. You have a mental representation of what your house looks like. And he found that even rats do this. So what he did was he put rats in a maze without any reinforcement at the end of it. He just put them in the maze. And what he found was that the rats would just kind of explore, but with no real purpose. But when he put some sort of reinforcement, some sort of reward, let's say cheese, at the end of the maze, after the rats had explored it a couple times, he found that the rats were able to, even though they had not shown any purpose in getting through it before, they were able to find their way very quickly through the maze once there was a reward. So, what he hypothesized was the rats had automatically formed a mental representation of the maze. And when there was a reason to use it, they were able to use it quickly. It's the same idea as like if you were a freshman any year but this year, and you come to like walk the freshman orientation, and you're being shown around the school by whoever, Savannah Dumas or whatever, and you're like walking around, you're like, holy shit, this place is so big, I'm never going to be able to find my way around here. And then on the first day of school, you look at your schedule and like, all right, I got to go to A211 for AP Psych. You'd probably actually be able to find your way there, even though you didn't realize you knew the layout of the school, because your brain automatically forms a map of the environment that you are in. All right, so cognitive maps are an example of latent learning. All right, any questions there? And then lastly, insight learning. Insight learning, the guy who did research on this name is Wolfgang Kohler. And he did it with chimpanzees. And what he did was insight learning is the aha moment of like you don't know the answer to something, and then all of a sudden, like the proverbial light bulb goes off, and you're like, oh, I know what it is. Okay. What he did with the chimpanzees was he hung like a banana. He hung bananas like really high up so they couldn't get them, and then he left a bunch of boxes and long sticks there. And the chimpanzees realized to get the banana that they would have to like build a tower, and they figured it out through trial and error how to do it. But insight is just when the answer comes to you all of a sudden. For instance, I'll show you this video real quick. This is a pretty cool little video. At least I think it's cool. This is of a chimpanzee, and so what they did was they put a peanut at the bottom of a glass tube, and the tube was too long for the chimpanzee to get the peanut out, and they wanted to see if the chimp could figure out how to get it out, and you'll see what happens. All right, so it just kind of the solution of the problem just kind of came to the chimp out of the blue. Okay. Anybody got any questions about those? Oh, I meant to say this earlier. So this is a little hint. So when you were studying, you may have looked at observational learning and modeling and their definitions and said, what is the difference between those two? There is not a difference. Observational learning is the term for the type of learning. Modeling is the name for the type of behavior that we do when we observe. Right? But to help you all out on the quiz, I did not include modeling. Modeling will not be a word for, it may be on the word list, but the definition for modeling is not on there. Observational learning is on there, but on that one, I took the word modeling off. And so you shouldn't get like them mixed up. And that definition is pretty straightforward because it says observing in it. Okay? All right. So what me and Mr. Kirby decided, Ms. Mulligan wasn't there yesterday, so I need to ask her, was that in terms of in terms of what I talked about last time with the averaging of quiz scores. So I don't think it's not fair to do that to people who like legitimately like tried really hard to do well on the second attempt. So I think that I've done this long enough to be able to be a good judge of things. So like if you go from a 20 to a 25, all right, I'm not going to average those two. I'm just going to give you a 25 because that's a legitimate jump right there. But if you go from a 2 to a 28, that's when I'm going to give you the average of it. All right. Because that is, I'm sorry. Okay. But nobody legitimately goes from a 2 out of 30 to a 28 out of 30. Legitimately. Okay. So for people who are freaking out about that, and I'm still going to, for people who do, I'm still going to take the highest of the scores for people who are legitimate. So don't worry about like if you get a 93 on the first one, and you're like, I don't want to do it again. What if I get lower? That won't be the case. Okay. Everybody understand that? So basically, just don't do what people have been doing, which is getting 2 out of 30. Like, even if you are doing it, like at least do a legitimate attempt on the first time. Okay. All right. So, as I said, since people's internet is all weird right now, I'm not gonna make you stay on here to take the quiz. However, I do want you to take it right now or do one of the attempts right now because some of you will not do it. if I don't like make you do it during class time. We should know at this point how to log on. So do I take it this? Yes, Sammer, you take it this afternoon when the internet comes back on. Okay, if you don't have internet, then you can't take it right now. Okay. All right, so hopefully we all know how to get to it at this point. All right, you go if you have multiple classes, you go to my class, and then anybody. This is 100% of the troubleshooting that I have to do. People will be like, "I don't have the quiz on my page." Yes, you do. You're just not clicking on the right thing. All right, you have to click on the class webpage. Click on the class webpage, and boom, there it is. Okay, so before you message me and say I don't have the quiz, click on the damn class webpage. All right. Okay, guys. So I'll send out the code via Remind as well. But just make sure to get the 2 attempts done by next class. Make sure you study for the test. All right, 70 multiple choice questions, 58 minutes, and there's a study guide. And yes, okay, yeah, guys. If your internet isn't working, then don't take the quiz right now. All right, and if your internet cuts out during the quiz, do the second attempt when your internet comes back. All right. It seems like some of you all need to there's sometimes very little just like common sense with, all right. If the internet isn't working, then don't do it right now. Oh, crap. I can't. There we go.